to what?
The chat.
Hi!
Good evening. It's Bec and Deb here. As always, putting the balance back into relationships, and a very good evening. And we're sitting here tonight doing this show in our hoodies because if you didn't catch our Facebook Live yesterday, we had a power cut in our house yesterday. The beauties of living in rural Devonshire. We had a power cut, and our power and our heating and everything was out for hours and hours and hours. So we obviously went off somewhere else to get warm and find some electricity and do some work. And our heating, everything could come back on by the time we got home yesterday afternoon, except for our heating. And for love nor money, we couldn't make the boiler work, could we? So we've had no heating since sometime on Monday evening. And just this afternoon, the landlord's been round and managed to fix it. So it's almost toasty warm in the house.
It's kind of getting warmer.
Yes. We've been in our hoodies and our, gloves and double socks. And fortunately, we have got some electric heaters, so we have managed to keep a little bit warm. But yeah, that's kind of why we're hoodied up. We both came down to breakfast in our hoodies this morning. So welcome and good evening, and welcome to our YouTube show for today.
So what we've literally just got that interesting. So it's all about warmth and heating, isn't it, at the moment? We've got back from our winter warmer retreat, which was over the weekend, which was an amazing retreat. If one of our people watching is Frank, hi Frank. Yes, Frank came to our retreat over the weekend, and he says he often watches our YouTube show. So if he's with us, it's great to have you here. So yes, and on our winter warmer retreat, we got there, and some of the heaters were out. So the theme started a little bit cool there too, but we soon got we got warmed in our hearts, I think, over the weekend. It was just,
and the heaters eventually worked. So we got warm too.
Warm inside and outside.
Yes.
Yeah, it was absolutely lovely. So we have managed to book our next retreat, because I don't ever like it when we haven't got a retreat in the pipeline, because there's such beautiful events. It's really nice to have one in the pipeline, but we hadn't managed to secure that and sort that out before we went off, because there's been so much going on with the conference and everything. But we have got the dates now. So that's the 21st to the 24th of February is our next retreat, and that is Love is the Answer. So because obviously we're going to be near Valentine's Day, so we thought we would bring love into that retreat. So if you're interested in that retreat at all, below this video there is a link to our website and the retreat page on our website, but I haven't actually this afternoon managed to get that up and going, but it should be by end of play today, or if not by tomorrow, you should be able to go and find out more information there. So and the other thing that we're having in January, for those of you that can't wait to hang out with us till February, we are having a hangout, what we're calling a hangout in January, because we were discussing, what it was like for us when we first came across the principles and when we were kind of just first in this conversation. And one of the things that we used to do was just literally hang out together. It usually involved me at the kitchen sink washing up or making cups of tea or cake and that kind of thing, and just some general chats while we were hanging out. And we would then maybe go out for a walk. We would just kind of do what life wanted us to do, really. And I was talking to Maria and Ash, who were speakers at our conference, and they had been to something like that on Salt Spring Island with Jan and Chip, who said the reason that they did that kind of thing was because that was exactly how Sid taught them. That
was a tongue twister, wasn't it?
I don't know why I got lost then. That was exactly what Sid used to do with them. He'd just say, come on over, I'm doing this today, just hang out with me while I do whatever it is I'm doing. And just let the conversations go wherever they go. So we thought that we would go back to doing that ourselves. So we're having that in January. So if you're interested in that, please do let us know. You can message us. We don't hide. We're not, we're visible on Facebook. You can put something underneath this video, or you can go on our website, and I will be putting something about that in the next couple of days on the website too, if you're interested in hanging out with us in January.
Yeah, that would be great. So our living and learning slot for today then, I think since we've just come back from the retreat, there's a few bits maybe to share.
Wow, all sorts happened on that retreat.
So I guess, yeah, I kind of living, or certainly my living over the last week has mostly been around the retreat. It felt like once we'd finished the YouTube show last week, we were into retreat preparation mode, and then we kind of were retreating, and then we've really only had one full day in the office since, because we were kind of kicked out of the office yesterday with no electricity. So yeah, I think the retreat has got to be kind of the living and learning for this last week. And I think what kind of really came to me again over the retreat particularly was how life really works, and kind of what the purpose of life was. We had a really nice chat. If you saw our we did a Facebook live from the hot tub.
Oh yes, we did the hot tub retreat.
And kind of after that live, we just sat in the hot tub and had a little bit of a chat. And I'd already been in there for a little while and was kind of in my head, just, you know, as you do sometimes. Oh, so yeah, life then, and what are we here talking about, and what are we going to talk about this afternoon in our sessions, and that kind of thing. And very much kind of we then went into a conversation, and we shared it at the retreat around kind of what the purpose of life is. And what was really interesting to me over the course of the retreat weekend, one of the people that was at the retreat had something that kind of actually happened there and then for them at the retreat, with a family member of theirs kind of passing away, and I think kind of a little bit unexpectedly. And they were able to share that with us while they were there. And for me, because we'd not long before that actually had a conversation about the purpose of life and what the whole purpose here was. And then that kind of happened, and it was really beautiful that they were able to share that with us in the midst of it happening, and was quite poignant around the conversation of the purpose of life. And I think for me, it just came back again to how much fun we can have, and how life is for living and having fun. And when we get incredibly lost and incredibly bought into how serious life is, and how we can't make mistakes, and how we have to get it right all the time, we lose so much of that fun. And we were actually having a conversation this morning about the kind of ups and downs of life, weren't we?
We were.
And how kind of, you know, if somebody was trying to sell you a ticket for a roller coaster that was just a flat roller coaster, I can't imagine you buying a ticket. I can't imagine anyone buying a ticket for that. We like the kind of ups and downs. We like that contrast. We like the moments where we're going to drop. Oh, we're dropping. And, you know, and I think that's the same for life. We like, you know, I get a lot of enjoyment out of my life, but I don't think I'd really appreciate that enjoyment anywhere near as much if I hadn't been through what I've been through, if I hadn't got so incredibly lost and so incredibly bought into the stories and the chaos that I managed to create some years ago. Like, I like that contrast. I like being able to appreciate and see that life is for living, and life is heaps of fun, like heaps of fun. And we just have and we were having a lot of fun at the retreat. There was a lot of banter, a lot of
Lots.
You know, everyone kind of got to know each other a bit, and there was some, you know, group jokes as there often is at that sort of thing. And I just really saw again how much fun we can have. And for me, that is just one of the main and most amazing parts of kind of being this human spiritual person that I am, however that works. Like, I'm 100% human, and I'm 100% spiritual. And it means this human form, this whoever I am, gets to do what I get to do from this amazingly safe place. Like, it's just like being a giant kid in a soft play area. I can run around and launch myself over here and jump into that thing there and dive down the slide over here. And it's really safe. And I love that. And I don't know, it really came back to me again over the weekend, how much fun we get to have. And, you know, that isn't limited to us. You know, we talk about that a lot. And I think sometimes I'm saying it thinking, oh, you might think that that's just us and it's all right for us because ... No, this is available to everyone. And I love that. And that was definitely kind of one of the key things that really came out for me over the retreat again.
Mm. Well, during the weekend, we ended up having a conversation late at night one night. It was us and a couple of the people who were attending the retreat, and we kind of ended up just sat round chatting. what I kind of saw again for those conversations is one of the reasons that we encourage people to stay in this conversation is because I think hanging out in this space, having conversations with people, sharing what you have seen and them sharing with you what they have seen, that to me is where the real gems of learning come from. Because there'd been something kind of there's been something over the time that I have been sharing this understanding. What I've noticed is that things will come to me, and I have quite a certainty within myself, quite a knowing within myself that I see something and I see the truth of it. And then because this understanding, we are pointing to something that is beyond the words. So to try and put that into words to share with other people what it is you're seeing can be incredibly difficult at times. It's fine if you're not having any intention of sharing in that way. That's fine, because what you see for yourself is enough for you. Because as I said, when I have these insights, often there's not necessarily words on them, and I couldn't exactly tell you what it is, but it's just like a knowing, a trusting of life. For me, what it is very much deepening the fact that I can trust life. So we ended up in this conversation, and it was really, really interesting for me that in that space, just sitting and having somebody ask me some questions and kind of probe around really in what it was I was actually seeing, really concreted a couple of insights I'd had for myself. It really made me see, I have a really deep knowing of the truth of that. And for me, a lot of the time when we speak about the principles, when we point towards this understanding, and a lot of the words that we use are around what we kind of believe to be true. What I see for myself is that there's something deeper than my beliefs. There's kind of a knowing within me that is beyond words, that is beyond my thoughts, beyond my thinking, that deeper truth of who we are. It kind of appears as a knowing. And although it's not the easiest thing to put words on, it was really, really nice to be reminded of that for myself. And then I had somebody this morning text me with a question, and they were kind of saying, how do I find out the deeper truth of who I am? And it was kind of coming back to me, that conversation that we had. And to me, it is very much, the way that we talk about knowing ourselves, the way that we talk about going inside yourself. And they're all words, and they're words that are not always the easiest to know exactly what it is we mean. But we all have a knowing within ourselves. When somebody points in that direction, it's almost like, Bec was talking about fun, and to me, it's almost like, right, how do I make sense of that? If someone's saying to me, go within, what does that even mean? And then it's kind of like getting curious and playing around. What does it mean for me when somebody says that? Where am I going? What am I doing? What am I looking towards? And the words that I put on that and how I make sense of that doesn't really matter, because I think the invitation is for you to do something similar, you to kind of find out for you, what does this mean? What is it we're pointing towards? And that just kind of, during that conversation, during the time that we spent together over the few days at the retreat, it kind of really came to me again that what we are talking about here, what we're pointing towards, although a lot of the words and a lot of the things that we say are concepts, what we are actually pointing to is something beyond our beliefs, something beyond our thoughts, something beyond that. There is something within us that is beyond a concept. And we kind of have to have concepts, and we have to use words, and we have to point in that way. But it doesn't look to me as if anyone doesn't have the capacity in some form to have a deeper knowing for themselves of what it is we're pointing towards. And I really think, you know, being in this conversation and playing around here and sometimes being confused, because trust me, I'm sure I can speak for Bec too, for the conversations we've had. Sometimes I feel very confused about things, and somehow out of that confusion comes a clarity and a deeper knowing about what, you know, what it is we're pointing towards. And then somehow having these conversations, we get to put words on it and we get to find the clarity. So I think my living and learning, to sum it up, is that staying in the conversation, however you decide to do that, you know, whether you watch our YouTube channel or that, there seems to be plenty of places where now, you know, online, and there seems to be plenty of ways where you can get into this conversation. And for me, being a part of this conversation is a real gift. And you know, I think it's amazing that these conversations are going on as much as they are. And I think it's an absolute gift to be able to be a part of this conversation. And yeah, I think it's through doing this that we begin to get to know ourselves more deeply, and we find, you know, that place within ourselves where we just know. And we can't explain that. We don't know how. We can't put it into words. We can't do, but we just know. We know that we can trust life. And then that's when it becomes that playground that Bec was talking about. It's when it comes, you know, you start to see the real fun in life. And like Bec said, it's not just us. I know in some of the conversations we had over the weekend, it's very easy to look at other people and kind of go, well, it's all right for you because whatever. But you know, the fun that we're pointing to comes from knowing yourselves, comes from that deeper understanding of who you are, and that is available to anyone who cares to play around in this arena and look.
Yeah, and I know there was someone at the retreat that really heard something in us, kind of saying to get playful, and that very much for me brings those two things together. It brings the fun and the lightheartedness of life, and the being in the conversation. Because what we kind of mean when we say get playful is like, toy around with this for yourselves, see what makes sense to you, kind of, but do it in a light-hearted way. You know, this isn't like a kind of serious test here that you're going to get the answers wrong. It's kind of toy around with it for you. And I know one of my favorite examples of doing that was when we did the zip wire. And it really, something really huge came out of that for both of us, because it was definitely, I mean, I'd done a skydive previously, so I'd got it in my mind, oh, a zip wire is going to be pretty easy. I'm going to be good with this. And Deb was going into it, I'm really scared of heights. This is going to be a real challenge for me. And because of the way, if you haven't heard this story before, I'll just share it because I think it's a beautiful example of how that being playful can really work in that way. When we kind of came to do the zip wire, you do like a kind of practice, a shorter run first, where they kind
which is quite big.
Yeah,
it's not.
If you're coming in with some kind of thinking about it, actually doesn't feel like a short run.
It's not a little one. It's not that little.
Apparently, it's shorter, and it gives the people kind of doing the zip wire, running it all, gives them an idea of kind of I think they have to know your weight and your all this kind of stuff anyway. So you kind of do this mini version of it first, and we'd kind of had, I think that it was around about the time that you first came, the wisdom first came to you to kind of ask yourself, are you all right even here?
Yeah.
And we'd had quite a few conversations about that, and you were very playful with it, and I knew you were kind of, it had gone through your mind in various different places up till then. And we came to do this kind of mini kind of run at it, and you walk up onto a platform and you're kind of queuing up, and you have to go, and people have to sort of get down into position, and they tag you onto the line and effectively shoot you off the end of this, throw you over the cliff basically. And as we're queuing up, the closer we're getting to the platform, I've suddenly gone into, I can't do this, and I'm watching these people drop over the edge and shoot along this line at some speed, and I just go, Deb, I can't do it. I'm really scared. I've gone in. I'm really scared. Talk to me. And you kind of dropped into that real place of, well, let's talk about, are you okay here? Are you actually in this moment? is there an okayness for you? Are you okay? And like we just had a back and forth for a couple, and it was momentary, really, wasn't it?
It wasn't a long time.
2 or 3 sentences back and forth, and I was like, yeah, I'm still a bit nervous about it, but I'm okay, and I'm gonna do. That was kind of where I got
kind
to
of
it.
take the next step. Are you okay? Bring it back to here. Are you okay right now? Just do the next thing. It was sort of that, really.
It was that kind of conversation, and that was it then. And we both kind of went on and did the vroom,
and we did it.
We did it, and that was great. And I absolutely loved it. And I was like, yes, I'm ready for the big one now. And I think you were okay after that as well.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. I was fine.
But then the way they'd set the
and they took us up the great huge hill.
You have to go on this massive truck, and it's an old quarry in Wales, and you kind of go up these sort of swoopy roads to get, and it's quite high comparative to the other one, isn't it?
As the lorry's going up,
the roads are steep, and the edges are quite sharp, and at that point you started having a bit of a meltdown, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I
let me off the lorry! Don't stop the lorry! And the lorry stops and waits for the other group to go first before it takes you
to a viewpoint and lets you look, and it's kind of my worst nightmare, really, because it kind of takes you to a place, and it's an open-sided lorry, and it takes you to a place where you can see for miles. And when you're in thinking about how high you are, the last thing you want to happen is this lorry to park at the edge of the quarry and say, look,
it's beautiful, isn't it? So Deb's having a bit of a meltdown, and I think what kind of came to you was to get out of the lorry and just stand on firm
I wanted to be on the floor, not in the lorry. I said, can I just get out of the lorry? And she wouldn't.
The rules are that you absolutely can't. But I think, you were, there was a few moments, okay. But we then had a conversation, and straight away what came to me was share Deb's words back at her. So we then had the conversation, are you okay here, Deb? Yeah. Are you okay even here? Can you take the next step? And almost had the same, that conversation in reverse. I took Deb's words and she kind of took mine. And it really, for me, that was us being playful with this. It was like neither of us had to do the zip wire. There was kind of nothing, we paid a bit of money for it. We didn't have to do it. But it was about being playful, and it was about seeing, can we be okay here? In what appears to be Deb's worst nightmare, and something that I'd gone in all guns blazing thinking I was going to be fine, and suddenly thinking trips me right up. Can we be okay even here? Can we take the next step even here? And we just both found that by being playful in that way, you did do the zip. We both did the zip wire, didn't we? And you literally, I think for a good kind of 5 or so minutes, you were quite literally taking the next step, weren't you?
Absolutely. When we got onto the platform, when we were really at the top height, it was literally like, move that leg, move that arm, move this. And it was but even when we're talking about it here, what I'm seeing is one of the reasons that I do those kind of challenges and play around in that way is because then when things happen in my life, if things that around money or my children or my relationship, if things kind of start to go into a place and I get fearful, I've seen that when I get very, very fearful, if I kind of come back to that place and touch that okayness within me and just take the next step, then I've seen that I'm okay. And it's kind of like, it allows me to do it, when something is going on in my life that I have no control over, not like a zip wire that I can say, actually, do you know what, I'm just going back down, I'm not doing this. If something's going on with your child or your relationship or something, that it's kind of like, no, you're in this there's no, you don't back out of this kind of plays out. It seems to me that having got playful with it in that way, it's like you can do this anywhere. It's kind of bringing myself back to that place and kind of, am I okay even here? And I've never yet found a place where when I get quiet, I don't even like when you say get quiet, we were talking about that at the retreat and somebody kind of repeat, and I thought, do you know what? Even when I'm really noisy, in literally when my head's going crazy, when it's internal noise or whether there's external noise, it's the same. We can come back to that place and just see the okayness. So very much, that was my playful, and your playful might be something entirely different, and that is fine too. What occurs to you, but definitely that kind of playing in this arena, it feels to me as if In the same way as when I was saying those words to Bec, we had a right laugh about it afterwards and said, oh, you actually got scared so that I could tell you what I needed to hear when I was scared. And it really felt like that. It was hilarious. And I think these times when it occurs to you to get playful, it feels to me as if I did that so that when things in my life, if something goes wrong in the business and somebody doesn't pay and there's a money thing going on or whatever, or there's our heating goes down and we're freezing cold and we don't know what's going to, it feels like, those games that I play, am I all right over here, even here? This feels like now there is something, but it plays out in the same way.
Yeah, so I just thought that was quite a nice little example of the kind of how we get playful with this conversation. So our question tonight is around decisions, and the question is, what if I'm wrong? And I think the way we've worded that is if you've made a decision and the decision you made was wrong.
Or even, I think for me, when that was kind of being discussed, was that whole, when you get into that place, you've got to make a decision and fear just grips you because you don't want to choose in case you get it wrong.
Yeah, definitely. So I think kind of what comes to me around that is two things really. One is around thought, and we talk a lot kind of about thought and getting to know what thought does and how thought works. And thinking something can be wrong or right is thought driven. Like we have a thought that is wrong or a thought that is right. And then we were talking again over the weekend at the retreat about the illusion that thought creates for us has to be extremely compelling and convincing. Otherwise, kind of what's the point? And that's the same with things like where things are right and wrong. Like it has to be convincing and compelling that this was right and that was wrong. Because kind of what's the point? Like, for me, I liken that to if I'm watching a movie, if I'm not really in the movie with the characters, I watch a lot of kind of rom-com, romance comedy type films, and I really get in there and I'm those characters and I'm falling in love and I want him to chase me to the airport, or I want to run to him and tell him I love him and live happily ever after. And if I'm not kind of getting that when I'm watching a film, what's the point in watching it? I want to be brought into it. I want to fall in love with the characters. I want to be so convinced that when somebody walks in and disturbs the film, I forget I'm even in the lounge watching a film. I was in New York being chased down the streets by the guy that loves me. I want that kind of experience when I'm watching a film or even a TV series or a book. I read a lot of books. I want that to be my experience. And for me, that's the same with us for life. If it wasn't that convincing that we can get caught up and we can get sort of really believe in what the story is that's running through our head, there wouldn't be any point. If we kind of always, saw through that instantly, thought isn't doing its job. It's not giving us that amazing experience. And for me, kind of something being right or wrong is thought doing its job. So that was kind of my first thing that I wanted to sort of start in on. I don't know if you want to maybe share something on that, and then I'll maybe share my other point.
I was thinking about that feeling, when we're making a decision and it feels like there's kind of two things that we've got to choose between. And it feels like it feels as if we have got to get it right. What's coming to me is that whole thing when we feel like there's something riding on it, that if we get it wrong, it's going to be disastrous, and we've got to choose the one that is right. And like you're saying around thought, it can be. What's coming to me is fear. We're in a place of fear. I have to get this right, and I think my mind goes into a place of the consequences of what will happen if I don't make the right decision and I don't make this right. My head goes and creates this entire future where I've made the wrong decision and the knock-on effect it's going to happen. That's going to happen, and all the things that are going to go wrong because I've made this decision and the decision is wrong. And what I'm seeing more and more around decision making is how those decisions seem to come through me and are not made by me. And exactly what you were saying about how thought works and how real it looks that I am the one doing that and I have to do it right. That's the illusion. That's that illusion that you were talking about. And what I'm seeing more and more. And the am I okay even here is a perfect example of kind of when I get into my head of, oh my gosh, you've got to make this decision. You've got to make it now and you've got to do it right. One of the things that's going on for me at the moment is we do a secret Santa within our immediate family, not, my children. On Christmas Day, we get together and we do a secret Santa. So I've been given the person that I'm buying for Secret Santa. And then we kind of get a list of things that they would, all sorts of things that they might like. And then I've got to make a decision about which one of these things do I buy. And I know that kind of sounds like it's not an important decision and it doesn't matter, but the process and what happens within my body is the same as when I was making the decision, should I sell my house or not? It feels like, oh, there's something riding on this. If I don't buy the right thing, if I don't, work this out so this person gets a nice present and it all works out right. The same thing happens. My head starts going to a future where all sorts of things haven't gone right because of this stupid or wrong or whatever decision that I've made. And what I really, really, really like to play with here is to just watch when that decision gets made and happens, when something actually happens from that. And I notice more and more, the less of me that there is in there, the less of those stories about what is going on, the less that I make up this terrible future where Christmas went entirely wrong because I didn't make the right decision. I just notice those decisions get made. They happen. We do stuff, and life continues to play out. Life continues to be life. And even when I look back at some of the places where I would have told the story, and I'm intentionally saying that, when I would have told the story that I absolutely made the wrong decision, what I've noticed is I'm still here. Life is still doing what life does. And in the fullness of time, things tend to work themselves out. And the only kind of thing, they don't necessarily work themselves out the way I think they should. But what I begin to see is that in the fullness of time, they matter less and less. And that time that I have spent being up in my head and worrying and creating scenarios where life was, the most terrible thing and I was struggling and suffering and Christmas had gone wrong, they rarely play out that way.
I really liked kind of what you were saying there around the kind of consequences and how things play out, because the second point I was going to come round to was actually when we make decisions, or when we think there's kind of decisions that we've got to get right or wrong, what it looks to me like is we kind of innocently tag on, like you were saying, consequences or a story and what it means about us. Like, if I choose the wrong Christmas present, it means I'm stupid, or I'm
Christmas
not thoughtful enough, or it means something about
I'll upset somebody.
Me. Yeah. And very much that kind of, for me, the more I've kind of looked in that direction of, can it mean anything about me? Can it change the truth of who I am? Does it mean I'm stupid because I've made the wrong decision? And the more I've looked at that, the less that I need to worry over decisions, and the more, exactly like you were saying there, decisions then just get made. And it looks to me like I'm making them, because that's how this experience is created. It looks like Becky says, right, I'll buy X, Y, and Z for Christmas, because similar to Deb, I'm doing Christmas present shopping at the moment. Fairly topical,
Really?
maybe. There might be some of you out there doing the same. That it looks like Becky does that. It looks like Becky goes to Amazon and types in, this idea and sees, pick something and that kind of thing. And to me, it doesn't actually matter whether it's me that does it or it's happening through me, in the sense of what matters for me and what kind of becomes helpful for me is when the weight is taken off my shoulders.
Yep.
When I'm not being buried in this, I've got to get it right, I've got to get it right, I can't get it wrong, because then it means this, and then that will happen, and then that will go wrong, and then that person will fall out with me, and that will happen. All of
me, really.
All of that is made up about me. And I just get out of the way and the decision is made, whether it's something as simple as what to buy for Christmas, or as kind of apparently big and decision heavy as whether to sell a house or not. It just looks like the more I get familiar with the truth of who I am and how that can't change, and how nothing I do out in the world can change that or means anything about me, the less there's this burden of getting it right and wrong, and there's just things happening.
When that word burden kind of was said then, Bec and I had quite a religious upbringing. We come from quite a religious family, and definitely kind of coming across this understanding and coming across an understanding of how life works and what's going on. It's made sense of a lot of the teachings that we had within the religion. And although neither of us now are religious or would say that, it's kind of, it's really, it's shown me that a lot of the what was being pointed to, what was behind those religions, you could see the thread of truth going through it. And I can remember as a young child being at Sunday school and kind of hearing that, all of those that are burdened, come into God and give your burdens to God. And I find that incredibly helpful now when you kind of say, it feels, I've got to make this decision. It feels like it's heavy on my shoulders. It feels like I'm carrying something heavy. And it feels like I can go, oh yeah, I don't need to. The minute I start to feel that, to feel burdened, it's kind of like, that's the moment to kind of hand it over. And that, we've talked about this before about being in a place of balance. And the minute we go out of balance, we know that we've overstepped taking responsibility. We've kind of moved into that place of actually believing we're responsible. And it feels to me like when I step over that line and feel burdened, that's a sign to me that I'm actually thinking I'm really responsible. And it's kind of like, no, give that burden. And if God doesn't work for you, the universe, the energy of life, the creative essence, whatever word, makes sense to you, it's like, the creative essence is going to find an answer. You don't have to, you can pass that burden on. You don't have to carry this on your shoulders. And first of all, again, to me, it's kind of an invitation to get playful. What does that mean? And to me, it's kind of the minute I get in that heady space of making up those stories and literally feeling like I'm carrying a heavy weight. It can weigh heavy on my heart, or it can weigh heavy on my shoulders. And we use, when we're talking about those things, we use these expressions. And it is because that is what it feels like. It feels like I have got something that I need to carry. And it's very much the minute I notice myself like that, I'm like, actually, whatever that decision is, when I get into that place, I know I'm carrying something that I have no business carrying. And it's like, I can put that out. And however that makes sense to you, for me, I know what I do when I'm in that. It is literally, it's kind of like, oh God, I can't do this anymore. Will you do it? And then I notice in the easiest of things and in the most heart-wrenching, difficult moments, it looks to me like I can pass that on. I don't have to carry it. And that for me is huge around decisions. And then I kind of watch how they play out. And half my Christmas present bought itself just before the YouTube show, I noticed.
Alongside some of mine.
Have I got the wrong thing? Do you know what? I'll let you know in January. I don't know how it's going to play out, but it seems the decision is made. And it feels to me, whatever comes next, whatever plays out over Christmas, will just be more invitations for me to know myself more deeply and, invitations for me to learn how I pass my burdens on to this energy behind life. How do I do that if it ever feels burdensome? whatever.
Burdensome.
Yeah. If it ever feels like that, you know, how it's an invitation to play with it and to have some fun. So
yeah, I love that. So our topic this evening actually fits a little bit with some of what we've just said, which is quite nice. That seems to happen a lot, doesn't it?
It does seem to happen to us a lot. Yeah, one thing leads on to another. It's like there's a connection or something.
Funny, isn't it? So our topic this evening is climate change, and it was something I think we picked because there's a lot of talk and we see a lot of this. Facebook is kind of our predominant social media platform that we use, and we do kind of, you know, we're in quite a few groups and we keep an eye on what people are talking about and we ask for questions and topic ideas and stuff. And I think actually somebody did come forward with this as a topic idea, but we had been kind of seeing it popping up in a few places, so it all came together quite nicely. So we decided to talk about climate change because one of the things we share and the way that we share is it's a spiritual understanding. And I know I hear the term spiritual bypass a lot around things like climate change and those sorts of things. And it's sort of an accusation, I think, a little bit, that when we have an understanding of who we are and when we kind of have these conversations that point to a spiritual nature, there can almost be a tendency to therefore just ignore anything that's going on the human side of things and just bypass it completely because we're spiritual and it's fine not to, you know. And so there seems to be that kind of conversation and that almost argument amongst people that, well, just because you have a spiritual understanding or this or that, you can't just ignore what's going on out in the world. And so I think we kind of thought, actually, it's time for us to share what we see around climate change and what's kind of going on in the world in terms of, there's a view amongst a lot of people that we are ruining the planet as humans. We are out damaging the planet constantly with the way that we live, with the things that we do, the way that we consume, the way that we even the way we eat and all that kind of thing. So yeah, we kind of wanted to talk about what we see around that. Do you want to get started? This is such a good topic.
Yeah, I think it's a really meaty topic, isn't it? And I think a lot of people have very, very strong views on this. And it was an interesting one for me, you know, when we started to see these. And like Bec said, we got a little, definitely we've been involved in a few groups and a few discussions about this. And I know a long time ago, when I first came across this understanding, what I began to see was the illusory nature of the experience that we are having in any given moment. You know, how much it can shift and change. And it was kind of beginning to see that the world outside of us is a projection of the world that is inside us. And it kind of seems to me that all change and all healing, you know, if we want a world that is different to the world that we live in, you know, if we think something should be different, then the place that begins to happen is within, you know, is inside each one of us. And I know, you know, that can really, really feel, because I've been there, you know, I've watched stuff with my children and things, and it's like, it really doesn't feel to me that changes, you know, if I feel my children should be different, even if that is coming from a place of real love, you know, because I want the best for them, I want them to have a good life, I want their lives to pan out in a nice way. If I think that any of those changes start with my children, that is when disaster begins to happen. You know, that's when everything, it just goes from bad to worse. When I begin to see that all change, all real and sustainable change, comes from within me. And I know we keep saying at the retreat over the weekend, I'm aware of that, but somebody shared something that I have seen this quote a lot and heard it, and it is, you know, as we change, the things that we view change. You know, it's not, things don't change and then our view changes. when we change, what we see changes. And I know it's a really, really difficult one to get your head around when it really, when we look out in the world and statistics come in of how terrible it is and what's going on and how much stuff is being pumped into our seas and how much damage has been doing to our fish and all these kinds of things. It's not an easy one to get your head around, that all lasting change begins from within us. And as we change, the world outside us changes. And it is so compelling for us to think that we need to change other people. We need to change governments. We need to change people in authority. We need to change teachers. We need to change whatever, blah, blah. We continue. Those people need to change. Well, hand on heart, coming from somebody who was in a very unhealthy relationship for a lot of years, trying to change someone else is a recipe for disaster. And it feels to me, when we are on that crusade and we truly believe that we need to change someone else, even if it comes from a very, very heartfelt place, it's always going to end in disaster. And to me, it's kind of testament to that when we look around the world and when we see the mess that the world is in. It is because so many of us believe that change happens from out there. And I have seen too many times to ever doubt it. When I have the courage to bring this back to me and I change myself, then changes happen outside of me that were way beyond anything I could have imagined. Way beyond anything. And to me, it doesn't feel like any kind of spiritual bypass. The courage to actually look within ourselves, and if someone else is being, there are plenty of politicians around here that I'm sure if we can get into this discussion, we could get really, really angry and kind of saying, they're being really not very nice people, and choose your swear word or whatever that you want to put in that place, when they're being really, really awful, doing really, really terrible things. And to look and kind of actually have the courage to look within yourself and see where you are being in some way, in some form, and maybe not directly, but there will be some learning for you to take back into within you to see something around that. And I think it takes courage to do that, and to do that from a place of not moving into victim mode. Because that to me is what the temptation is. When I started to say, oh, I'm just as bad as that person, I'm awful, I'm terrible, I'm causing this, it's me, I've slipped into victim mode. And I think it takes real courage to stay in your grounding and stay in that place of absolute okayness that we are always talking about, that place of balance, and look within yourself to what can you do within you. Because beginning to see the deeper truth of who you are and beginning to get a real feel for this understanding that we are sharing is by a country mile, by the biggest measure that you can have in the history of the universe. That is the greatest gift you can give humanity. And I can't stress that enough. If you can truly do that, or even come some way towards doing that, that is where real true change happens.
The thing that was really kind of coming to me as you were talking was this, like, it looks for me like we've got the whole thing backwards. Like, we talk about this kind of the backwards thing and turning 180 degrees. We had recently, we had the conference, and there was somebody that was talking about coming to the conference, and they run a school, and we were having a couple of back and forward conversations and saying, it'd be really useful for you and the school for you to be at the conference. And then what ended up happening was they couldn't make it because there was some disaster or some situation at the school that required their attention. And really from the outside, it looked really, really clear to us that in that kind of circumstance, in that kind of situation that was going on, the best thing they could have done was be at the conference. And what we have it set up as human beings is we're actually quite egotistical in this way. It's like, I can't leave the school in the middle of that trauma to come and be in a space that would actually be helpful, because the school will fall apart. We can't turn our backs on the planet and look inwards, because the planet will fall apart. And to me, it comes back to that. Who do I think I am that I can save the planet in that way? The only place I can save the planet from is within, like Deb's just been pointing to. Healing the world is an inside-out operation. And I kind of, when we're looking at a planet and saying humans need saving and the planet needs saving, we've got that completely backwards. The place to look now is inwards. The place to do this from is within. And we think we are so kind of up in our heads and kind of convinced that we can do this, that we're looking outwards, and we've got it 180 degrees the wrong way around. And it takes, like exactly like Deb says, it takes courage to look within, to take our eye off the ball out there and look within and do this. And what I really saw when this head teacher was kind of saying, no, I can't come to the conference because they need me. That is the time to be at the conference. This is the time to look within. The only way the world is going to heal now is if we are brave enough to go within and find that place in us where we can be healed, where we can see the truth of who we are and the truth of how this illusion really works. That's the place to heal. And it really, I can really see how compelling it is that we need to go out there and fix the world. But what comes to me in that is, what if the world doesn't even need humans? What if it's okay that the human race dies out? We really believe that we can't let that happen. But what if that's the perfect answer? And we're out there trying to stop that. The first act of war is defense. Now, we're trying to defend the human race and save it, instead of going within and seeing how the world can really be healed. And it takes courage to do that, because we think that by taking our eye off the ball out there, the planet's going to die, the human race is going to die out, whatever it is that we think is the consequences. If we're spiritually bypassing and looking within, that's going to die.
I think we can slip into, I think it is something we can slip into doing out of fear. And that for me is like when we talk about
head in the sand type of behaviour.
When we talk about knowing ourselves, and it can be really, our ego can kind of, the way that our thinking comes in, it is a tricky little sucker.
Oh, yes.
It is. And that to me is a deeper knowing of ourselves. Know when you've had the wool pulled over your eyes. When very much we talked about when you were kind of saying those things are about me, and like when we were in decisions, this kind of feels like there's connections in there as well. I have to make the right decision here because I have to save the world. I have to do this. And it's like me, isn't it? And why do we have to save the world? Because I'm not comfortable if the world's not here. I'm not comfortable if I've got to die. And even when we're looking towards those people we love the most, even when we're kind of thinking, my children need a future. If we just stop, why do your children need a future? Because you need to feel better. My children need to live long and fulfilling lives because that's what I want. That makes me look good. That makes me feel good that my children are living long, fulfilling lives. And when we actually come back to it, how do I know what should happen next to this planet? Exactly like you were saying, how do I know how this should play out? But it definitely takes courage to look at that and face that and see it, and not kind of go into that place of, oh great, this means I'm off the hook, then I don't have to do anything. And that is not what we are.
Entirely different thing.
Now that is a spiritual bypass.
Yeah,
that is that kind of, I can just let life play out. Very much, go back to that thing that we talk about a lot, taking responsibility whilst knowing you're not responsible. And even with something as huge as climate change, it's kind of look to yourself and take responsibility for yourself. But if you've gone into a place where that feels like a huge burden, where that feels like it's something that's resting on your shoulders that is too difficult, you don't have to carry that burden. It means that you've moved over into taking responsibility, you've moved over into actually believing that it's down to you what happens, to this world. And there is an intelligence behind this that was here way before you and I, even way before I was, a long time. It's been here a long time. And, it's been around. It knows things. It's greater than us. We are of that. We are a part of that. We're not separate from it. But it's not our job to take things upon our shoulders. It's our job to know ourselves enough to know what our invitation is and when to step up to that invitation. Take responsibility whilst knowing we're not responsible. And I think definitely with kind of some of the conversations that are around climate change, and, the way some of the people that I've had conversations with, how affected they're being by it, it feels to me like they have kind of tipped over into carrying it as this huge burden on their shoulders. And it doesn't feel to me as if we are anywhere near as effective when we are carrying burdens in those kinds of ways, when we've slipped. The whole reason that we feel burdened, that is an alarm clock to wake us up to the fact that we've misunderstood something here. This isn't for us to do. And what is ours to do, and the decisions that we have to make around that, get themselves made and play out and happen in exactly the same way with a Christmas gift that you're buying for somebody and a decision you make about world peace. It doesn't look to me, this system works the same way. It's not fussy about which one of those it's kind of helping you with. And that is what, knowing the deeper truth of ourselves, we begin to truly see that. We begin to have a feel for and a knowing of that.
So that was our topic this evening. And as with any of these topics and questions, if it's brought stuff up for you and you want to ask more questions or suggest other topics we can talk about, we'd love to kind of hear those from you. We really like the topics and questions to be stuff that you particularly want to know about, because inevitably, if you're thinking it, someone else will be, and probably lots of other people. So send those in. And as always, there are plenty of ways that you can kind of work with us if you want to go deeper with any of the stuff we talk about. We've actually just this afternoon been looking at some programs and events we've got coming up in the new year. So what have we got? What did we talk about? We're going to do we've got a retreat in February, which we mentioned at the beginning, a hangout in January. We're going to, I think, do another mini mentoring program in January, because we're partway through that this month, and it's really nice. It's really lovely. Yeah. So we're going to launch another one of those in the new year. We're going to have a full mentoring program in the new year. We're also doing facilitator training in the new year.
Very excited.
For the first time, which we're super excited about. And am I allowed to do a spoiler on what we were talking about earlier?
Yeah,
so we were brainstorming this afternoon on something that will perhaps come around springtime next year, but just as a spoiler for our people out there, we're going to launch a relationship school. in the spring next year, and we're just starting, like the seeds are being sown as to what that's going to look like and how we're going to play that out.
We were really having
some
fun with
nice
that.
conversations as to what that might look like. So watch this space. But yeah, there's lots and lots of ways to kind of work with this. So as always, we're very, very easy to get hold of if any of that appeals, or if you want to ask us any questions.
Yeah, if you leave comments below this video, we always find them. You can find us on Facebook. You can email us. My phone number's all over the place on our website, daretobeyou.co.uk. So yeah, find us. So next week on our YouTube show, our topic is going to be seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary. Because it's just a beautiful, heartwarming topic. I really absolutely love that. Sorry, I've got to have a look with
on the whiteboard. Can you read it?
The whiteboard's a little bit, it's behind us. So our question next week is, how can I not be scared? And that's come off back of a couple of conversations we have. So we're going to be talking about that fear and how we get into fear, and what can we do about that. So I'm sure it's going to be another great show.
Who knows?
we usually end up having quite a lot of fun.
We have a lot of fun. We hope you do.
Yeah.
Thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been a lovely hour that sped by, as always. So thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, take care, and hopefully we will see you in person somewhere very soon. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.